Across from me is my brother with another mother, Coach 24, Darwin Penny. How are you doing this evening, sir?
We are doing well. We're glad to be here. Happy New Year to everyone, and we're looking forward to a great show.
Awesome. And over to my left, running the show and is in charge, DJ Scatter, George Walker. Mr. Walker, how are you doing this evening, sir?
Hey, I'm doing super fantastic.
Awesome, awesome. And I am the awesome voice, Brian Kress. And we've got a lot of football going on, and we've got a lot of surprises that's happened within the last 48 hours. So let's get into it. But first, let's talk about the Royals. Has the Royals picked up anybody since the new year?
Well, our last significant signing was Hunter Renfrow on the 19th of December, and since then, everything else has been, some minor league deals. We're able to have some guys invited to spring training as non-roster, and so the spring training roster of about 63 guys is set now. And so it's going to be, again, still a few more deals are looking. We're still looking for a left-handed hitting utility guy. Free agency as a whole has been slow this off season, and so especially with the huge signings of Otani and Yamamoto coming over from Japan now, and so those are some things that have been in the works. But the Royals are still looking for one more guy in the bullpen, at least, to try to continue to create competition to bolster that bullpen. And then, like I said, a left-handed hitting utility guy, somebody who could play second, short, third base, and possibly one of the outfield positions.
Absolutely. Now, saying this, the Royals have really done a lot of spending. Now, unlike the Dodgers, when they've really done some spending, they had said that the Central Division in the AL had probably $187 million of total spending, with the Royals about $106 million.
Yeah, it has been an aggressive move, and that's an attribute to J.J. Piccolo really trying to step in and now make this his team, his organization, with no slight to the job that was done by Dayton Moore, and also to the commitment of Mr. Sherman, our owner, to say, we're committed to putting a competitive team out on the field. Wanted to do the very best that we can. When you look at it, it's a long-term investment. When you look at our best young player, Bobby Witt Jr., the thing, in order to sign him to a long-term deal, one of the things that he's going to want to know is that we're committed to having a winner, because he's not going to want to play his entire career in a situation where he puts up numbers, gathers a bunch of individual awards, and then never has a chance to play in the postseason, right? Because that's how you're ultimately judged is what do you do in the postseason, save a few guys because of the way, and especially the way that the format is now when you got so many more teams. It was a lot different when you look at Ernie Banks' career, and he never got to play in the postseason. They had that dramatic collapse in '69. But because he hit 500 home runs and who he was as a person, he still is regarded in high esteem when it comes to being a Hall of Famer and what he was able to accomplish in his career. And so I think when you look at the Royals, we had to be aggressive this offseason to try to give ourselves a chance. The American League Central has been one where teams could rebound from worst to first in the division and have an opportunity to go and compete. And I don't think that nobody in the division is a juggernaut that's so far ahead that you say, man, we can't catch them.
Right, absolutely. So, unlike the AL or the NL West, when you've got the Dodgers and you had San Diego at, the last few years, spending a lot of money. This year they decided they're not going to do that, but you've got the Dodgers that spent $1 billion.
They invested $1 billion of long-term salary. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but saying that, I like the ability of the Royals to get a chance this year, where last year they really never had a chance.
Yeah, got off to a slow start. Like I said, a lot of young players, inconsistent pitching, both starting and from the bullpen, and never could seem to get good pitching, good hitting, good defense on the same day. We'd have good pitching, and then all of a sudden the bats were cold. And then we'd have a day where the lineup would go out and score some runs, and then all of a sudden there was no no pitching support, or the bullpen couldn't close the game out. It was always something. And so I think it's a commitment as the whole organization to try to get off to a great start this year and give those kids a chance to go out and be successful, to continue to build around Bobby Witt Jr. and Miguel Garcia. Miguel has had an outstanding winter league over in the Dominican Republic, and he continues to grow as a hitter. We know what we're going to get with Salvi and his veteran presence and leadership there. And then if these other young guys around, and then the guys that we've added to Renfroe, the pitching that we've added, all of a sudden just can we be relevant after the All-Star break? And I think that's the biggest key, right? For this year, I mean, a good season would be for us to get to 500. If we could be 81-81, and that's not saying that we don't want to win a division or anything like that, but coming from 100-plus losses for 3 years in a row, and to get to 80 wins, to get to 500, would be a remarkable achievement.
Absolutely, because during the second half of the season, especially in August and September, the Royals have been playing better. So if you are already 30, 40 games behind, under 500, and then you start playing well, it doesn't do nothing. But if you're at 500 near the All-Star break, and then you play well in August and September, then that totally will benefit them, and that will give them that shot at the playoffs.
Right, and it's going to give us a chance to feel like the rebuild is in place, and that within another year or so, now you're contending for a division title and certainly a playoff spot. And so that's what you want to do, is you want to make sure that beyond the All-Star break is that we are relevant, that we have something to play for besides contracts and pride. And I think those are going to be the important things, and we'll go out and look, and that's what the whole off-season and the commitment level of not only the front office but ownership as well, to be able to bring guys in, to bring a Seth Lugo in, Will Smith, who has been on the last two World Series champions out of the bullpen for both the Astros and the Rangers. And so those are the things that I think when you look as a fan, you said, man, we brought in, it may not be household names, You know, it's not like bringing in a Garrett Cole or something like that. It's not bringing in Otani, but guys who have a track record of winning, guys who now have playoff experience. Because when you look at our homegrown players, we got basically one player with playoff experience, and that's Salvi.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, what, 8 years ago? 9 years ago now, going into the 2024 season. Wow. It just seems like yesterday that we won the World Series. And now, at least now, I can say that we have a decent shot at a productive season instead of saying, okay, well, you know, how long is this going to take before we totally tank out? So now, going on with the stadium, and I've heard that they at least have blueprints of the $2 billion stadium, and it looks pretty sweet.
Yeah, the stadium will continue to be a huge topic until there's actually a game played in it. You know, it's something that, you know, you and I have talked about not only on this show, but just in time spending together. And, you know, and I've said to you time and time again, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. And there's going to be some there's going to have to be some concessions on both sides, on whether it's the Royals or whether it's Jackson County. And then obviously just to get it to a vote for the fans or for the residents of Kansas City to have an opportunity to do something special, to have a place that would be among the elite in Major League Baseball, but it goes hand in hand. It really would be nice to have a nice new stadium with a nice new competitive team that you can place out there. And so there's still a lot to be done, and to determine where that space is, you know, and to figure out how it's going to be financed amongst the taxpayers and amongst the city and the county. I think the best thing for all is that the Royals do stay in Jackson County, and then you still have a lease with Jackson County out at Kaufman, and how that's going to be. And then if you do get a new stadium, what happens to Kaufman? Do the Chiefs do something different with Arrowhead? Do they build a new stadium? And so it's something that as a resident, as a taxpayer, that we have to look at all of this, because it affects all of us, whether you are a fan or not. It affects you if you are a Jackson County resident, if you are a Clay County resident, or any other, because we know people from all over the 5 counties go to the ball game, not just people who live in Jackson County or people who live in Kansas City, Missouri. And so how do you split that cost amongst everybody?
Absolutely. So saying that, I at least now have seen a little more positives in what's going on, because I believe they do have a proposal for the April voting, whereas 2 months ago, even a month ago, we didn't know what was going on, and nobody even had a clue. So that is a great thing going on with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but baseball will be starting in roughly 6 weeks. So in between these 6 weeks, we got some football. Now, I'm going to go with the college football. Michigan took care of Washington, but it took a fourth quarter before they finally pulled away from Washington. In fact, in the second quarter, actually they had dominated the first half, and then they went for it on fourth down, roughly at midfield, and they missed. And Washington came back, and you could just see the Michigan fans go, "Oh no!" Because I've got one friend who is a huge Michigan fan, and he was having a heart attack big time, because he was like, "Oh no, they're going to blow it." But then in the second half, they finally pulled it out late. Now, they knew I picked Michigan. Who did you have?
I figured Michigan would win the game. I thought just their experience and their defense had just really been good, and then they were really running the ball well. They did an outstanding job in the game against Bama, even though that game went down to the very end in overtime. I thought that would also give them a boost. I thought Washington played really well against Texas, even though I thought Texas had a better roster than Washington did, and it still went down to a play at the end, and you could make an argument that there was interference on the play, but Penix had played so well, and I thought it would be a closer game than it was. Michigan's defense was even better than I anticipated. And how they were able to confuse Penix, and he never got comfortable in that game. Certainly not the way that he did against Texas, who had a pretty stout defense coming in. And so hats was off to Michigan and the game plan that they were able to do and to keep Penix and that Washington offense off balance and really in check. All the way throughout the game, even though it was still a one-score game, you never felt like Washington was about to take charge of the game. You felt like Michigan was in control, and then their quarterback and their running back really took over. And then once their defense knew that Washington had to throw the ball, they pinned their ears back and they really got after Penix. And so it made it very difficult. That young man wound up with some broken ribs.
Oh, I'm telling you. I think they only sacked him like twice, but they hit him over and over.
That was something that I used to always try to stress to my players when I was coaching high school football. It's not about a sack. It's about getting their timing off, making him throw the ball before he's ready, and then sometime just the continuous pressure and the hits that you put on a quarterback is just as effective of a sack. A sack is one play, whereas consistent pressure and hitting of a quarterback is multiple, and then all of a sudden you get that guy off his mark a little bit, and that's what you saw. Penix was just a little bit high, a little bit late with his throws in that game because of the relentless pressure that Michigan was able to place upon him.
Yep, and with that, Jim Harbaugh got his national championship that he was longing for, and did it with his alma mater. And so, what is next for him? Does he stay at Michigan, or is he going to move on?
I think if the right NFL team comes calling, I think he goes back to the NFL and then tries to do what very few have been able to do, is to win a national title and to win a Super Bowl. He was close to winning a Super Bowl back in 2012. When he was with the 49ers and actually, played against his brother in the Super Bowl. And so I think that's what's next. There's been so much turmoil in his tenure at Michigan, despite the success, despite making Michigan relevant again. But you know how it is in those blue blood programs. If you don't beat Ohio State, all the rest of it doesn't matter. Right, if you don't get a national championship. And the reality of it is Michigan hadn't won a national championship in roughly 30 years. And so I think the next move for him is to go to the NFL. I think the perfect place for him would be San Diego. He's got his quarterback in place, so you don't have to go and get a quarterback. They've already spent money on this quarterback. They've given him his contract. They've had some defensive weapons in the past. They didn't play that well defensively this year, but they were really, really banged up. You got a pass rusher in Bosa there. There's a lot of things in San Diego that are in place, and I think he could bring a culture to them that would give them an opportunity then to start to compete in the division. All the teams save Kansas City are pretty much in the same boat. With the exception that I think he has his quarterback, where Denver doesn't have their quarterback, and neither do the Raiders. And so I think his opportunity to get back up on top and go and not have to totally rebuild, but just restructure an organization, and that would be the job. If I was him, I wouldn't go to New England. I wouldn't go. The other place that he could probably go, but he just doesn't seem to fit. Atlanta has some things in place over there. They don't really have their quarterback, but they've got some other things. I think they could trade for a quarterback, because if I were Atlanta right now, I'd probably trade for Justin Fields.
Yeah. So, saying that, I had a question asked me on Marvin Durant's show. He said, what are the 4 players that you think would more than likely come back to their team? And one was Chris Jones, Justin Fields, and oh my gosh, and I just lost the two other names. Shaquan Barkley,
Saquon, okay.
Shaquan, and I'm trying to think of the 4th one because Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
So
I don't think Derrick Henry's going back to Tennessee. I don't think Saquon will go back to the Giants, and I don't think Fields is going to stay in Chicago. Chicago can move on from him, get draft picks, and draft a quarterback, right? They can draft Caleb Williams.
right.
And then you can get more picks, so you can surround Caleb Williams with some other players like a Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Chris Jones would be, of those choices, would be the most likely to re-sign with his team.
You think so? Because I truly believe that it's either Chris Jones or L'Jarius Sneed. I know the Chiefs cannot financially and salary cap wise sign both of them, and I truly believe that Sneed would be the more better need. And I know losing Chris Jones would be a huge loss for the Chiefs, but I'm thinking that he would be going somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think that's a valid point, but I just think that where he's at in his career, if he gets a fair offer, he'd be willing to stay here. Whereas I think Sneed's at a point where I'm going to go to the highest bidder.
Yeah,
He's younger, and it's, corner is such a valued position. I think he goes to the highest bidder.
So you think that actually the Chiefs will lose Sneed over Jones?
I would think so, right? Because I just think there's going to be a lot of teams that see the value in a young player like Sneed, and I think he may warrant more than what the Chiefs are willing to spend.
So let me ask you this: would you, if you were Brett Beach,
Mm-hmm.
would you franchise tag Jones, trade him to Chicago, and get Marvin Harrison Jr.?
No, I just wouldn't franchise tag a D lineman. That's just, for me. That's a you've pushed this scenario with Jones long enough. You need to see if you can sign him or not. Right? We don't need the holdouts. We don't need all the other stuff. He wants a long-term contract, so you either sign him or you don't. Right? I would be more apt to franchise tag Sneed, and then see what you could be able to be creative to do. But I think the Bears would be foolish not to go all in, whether they keep Justin Fields or if they choose to trade him or whatever. However, they have to figure out how they can get Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
They've got to figure out a way. That's whether they take him with a first pick or whatever. They've got to get him.
Right, and
So-
he officially said that he is now in the draft.
Yes.
because he had thought about going back to Ohio State for his senior year. So,
Yeah, no, he's in a situation where he's definitely going to be one of the top 5 guys,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that if Chicago chooses to keep their quarterback, that they draft him number 1 overall.
Gotcha. So we've got that taken care of. So now there were some main coaches, and the one was in college was Nick Saban. I will cite him for a moment, but in the NFL, you had Pete Carroll stepping down. You had Bill Belichick stepping down. You had Mike Vrabel stepping down. I seriously say they all got fired, but because of what Carroll had done and what Belichick has done, it was more of a mutual agreement. Now, saying that, I don't think I will see Carroll coaching again. I think he's going to stay in the system, in the Seattle organization, in another development or part of the team. But Belichick, who would want to pick up a 71-year-old head coach and give him everything?
I personally don't think there's a team out there that is willing to do that at his advanced age. I think there is a lack of ability to adjust to the new age NFL. I think you saw him not adjust and it go bad the last couple of years. He hadn't the places where people have value now, quarterback, receiver, things like that. He hadn't drafted well. So why would you want to bring that into your respective organization right now? I think that most of the teams would pass on that and go after somebody younger, innovative, fresh, unless somebody was just going to give him a 2-year deal. And if you're in the position where you're hiring a coach right now, how many teams that are hiring a coach right now or feel like they are a coach away from contending? I don't think any of these teams feel like they're there. I think they all feel like they're going to have to be, he hadn't been quarterback friendly, and Tennessee is going to have a new young quarterback. He'll be in his second year next year there. There's already been enough in the Chargers and having to deal with turnover coach. You get him there, you're going to be turning over coach again in another 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
So why do you want to put yourself in that position? I think the best thing that Belichick could do, if he still wants to be in the NFL, is be an advisor to somebody in their organization. But if it was me, I wouldn't hire him to be my head coach. And I think he's one of the greatest coaches that ever lived. But because of his advanced age, I can't guarantee he's going to be my coach for the next 4 years.
Yeah, I totally agree with you with that. But the problem is that he's still going to want to be coach. He still wants to coach because he would still like to get that NFL record. He would like to beat Don Shula's record. So saying that, it's going to take him, I believe, even if he has decent years, like 3 or 4 years in order to do that. And I'm not sure anybody will do that. And by the time then, he's 75, 76 years old.
Right. I just think it's going to be hard. I understand that he'd love to chase that record, but if he was going to get that record, New England was going to be the place that he was going to get it. I just don't think right now he's going to go somewhere, even as crazy as Jerry is. I think Steven would talk him out of it like that. No, like he had to talk him out of drafting Johnny Manziel. Like, hold on, you're about to lose it all together, right? Jerry always says nobody knows the size of the check that he would write to get another Super Bowl and everything. So, but I don't know where he fits in. I don't think he fits in Atlanta. I don't think he fits in Tennessee because basically Vrabel is a clone of him, and so you need to go. If you're going to go a different direction, Tennessee, then go a different direction. And so I just don't know where he fits in. A lot of people were talking about the Chargers, and I'm just like that's not the fit.
Right. And I totally agree with that. And I can see Vrabel go up to New England and take over New England. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was actually invited by Robert Kraft to sit in his booth to watch a football game. And how rare is that another head coach sits in the press box or the suite of the owner of another team. So I can see that going on because they want to try to keep the so-called New England tradition going. But to be honest, I don't know how much longer Robert Kraft is going to be around owning the team. I imagine he's going to own it until he passes away, but he is also getting up there in age too.
Yeah, ownership is always ownership. If you are kind of a hands-off owner like he is, yeah, there's conversations that he may have with the coach, and he has had those conversations with Belichick because of the fact that Belichick was also the general manager. But normally the head coach and the owner don't talk as much unless one of them has a dual role and everything. So I think that Vrabel could possibly be an answer up there. So the Patriot way could continue, but there's some adjustments that need to be made. They're still playing good defense. Right. They need an offensive identity and philosophy, and then to get a quarterback, and then at some point in time give up the premise that you don't need a high-profile receiver, and spend some money and get a high-profile receiver, or at least draft a good one that can play well, and give them a quarterback that can get the ball out there, and let's see what happens.
Absolutely. And we are at halftime on Any Given Sunday on KUAW. We've got Coach 24, DJ Scatter, and myself, Awesome Voice. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about Nick Saban for a moment, and then we're going to get into the playoffs for this weekend. All right, we're back with Any Given Sunday on KUAW, and I can't hear myself. So anyway, Awesome Voice, Coach 24, and DJ Scatter. And I am trying to talk as loud as I can so you guys can hear me. So if you can't, call in or at least message and let us know. But anyway, so getting back to coaching, you know, we were talking about Belichick and Pete Carroll. Nick Saban did the exact same thing. He retired. He's also 71 years old. But I think there's more to it than him just saying that he wasn't satisfied with his production.
Yeah, I think there was a with the new order of football and how college sports has changed with NIL, the transfer portal, having to basically pay for players. We were listening to one coach who said basically you have to have $2 million in NIL money to be able to get a frontline quarterback, whether it's somebody that you are recruiting out of high school or it's somebody that's in the transfer portal. You're going to have to come up with $2 million worth of NIL money. And how these people are putting together these collectives, I think that was something that Nick Saban viewed as a detriment to college football, to college athletics as a whole. And so, and I think there was also his opportunity to see that there's a chance for a shift in power. But I would also challenge Nick from the fact that for a long time, SEC schools were able to get players that a lot of other conferences couldn't get based on entrance requirements at those SEC schools. And you saw the power shift to SEC and where they have dominated over the last 2 decades as far as national titles goes. But I think there's a different type of player, and you have to ask yourself, when I'm dealing with the modern athlete, I'm 5 decades older than they are. Do I have that type of energy? Am I willing to adjust? Am I willing to change who I am at an advanced age so that I can be relevant to my players? And I think at some point in time he had to say, I can't do it anymore. Or do I want to do it anymore and give myself a chance to enjoy retirement just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's odd because we're kind of in that realm of those type of coaches because we can identify them with our age, whereas, you've got these, 19, 20-year-old kids, and you used to be able to not necessarily, I guess you could actually say control them. You had them doing what they need to do. You've got them on a schedule. You tell them what to do. And now it seems like that these kids are more in control of what's going on. It's kind of like almost today's parenting. I see kids, 20, 30-year-olds, they have their kids and they're telling me that, well, my kid wants to do this. And I'm like, holy mackerel, if I told my parents that, it would not work at all. So saying that, that's, it's the new system. And I know it works for the younger people, but for these coaches that are up there in age and everything else. So and saying that, how does it affect the SEC now with Nick Saban gone?
Well, I think that most people will think that over the last couple of years, Georgia has infiltrated that dominance that Alabama had. And is there a chance for Alabama to go backwards and some other teams to move forward in the SEC race? The SEC is going to also add 2 great programs next year with Texas and Oklahoma. And so does that change the way the SEC is? But Nick was like the godfather of the SEC, and he had a lot of influence. And I think that's going to be the thing when you talk about rules, sportsmanship, things like that is where Nick's greatest impact will be. Can Alabama get another top-level coach? Absolutely, right? Will Alabama be able to get top players recruiting-wise? Absolutely. They're going to always be relevant, at least for the foreseeable future. They have resources. They have alumni. They have NFL caliber players. If I was a wide receiver right now, I could go out and look at the number of Alabama wide receivers in the NFL, right? I could look at the running backs and say, I've got a chance to go and play in the NFL if I go play at Alabama. But the cakewalk that they had for a while there, now we saw 2 years ago Georgia break through, and now will other teams, will Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin continue to climb? Will Texas come in with all their resources and be a mainstay in the SEC? Will Oklahoma bring, Sooner Nation in there and be that opportunity for them to also upset how things go. Mizzou made drastic improvements this year. Arkansas, and so the SEC will continue to be, LSU. Will Florida get back to where they once were when it comes to the SEC? And so I think the SEC will miss Nick as a colorful individual, as one of the most highly regarded, if not the greatest college coach that we've ever seen. And I think that opportunity will be tested over this next year.
Absolutely. Now, I will say this. I think the Big Ten now will definitely put a challenge into the SEC, because it's been pretty much the SEC, kind of the top three levels, and then you had all the other conferences. I think with Michigan, with or without Jim Harbaugh, helped solidify the Big Ten, and then you've got the Oregons and the UCLAs and USCs coming in to the Big Ten and challenging, coming into the Big Ten and bringing a stronger conference. It's really going to be interesting to see, but at the same time, I really enjoyed as an old schooler, I enjoyed all the way back to the Big Eight.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Big Eight, you had the SEC, you had the Southwest Conference,
Mm-hmm.
you had all those, the Pac-8 or Pac-10. You had all them. So it's going to be really an interesting next 5 years and see how that goes.
Yeah, now it truly has become, 5 elite conferences. We are glad that next year they'll expand the playoff to 12 teams. And so some of those teams that are not in a Power 5 conference would still have an opportunity to get in, like Central Florida a few years ago when they were undefeated. We can get a few more David versus Goliaths in these new format with 12 teams in the playoffs. And so, like I said, I think there's been about to be a shift in college football. But just as soon as I say that, with the SEC adding teams, and then also the Big Ten, what is the ACC going to look like over the next couple of years? And then even the Big 12 will have a new look. Will somebody emerge out of there? Will Colorado really emerge as a powerhouse under the leadership of Deion Sanders and his galvanizing personality and his ability to get players in there? So we'll see. It's going to be fun.
And it will be very, very interesting. So now we will go to the most important part, the NFL. And we've got 6 games this weekend. The 2 teams that will definitely not lose this weekend is San Francisco and Baltimore, because they have the bye week. But saying that, this is really weird, because I don't think this has ever happened. They had the first 3 games are for the AFC, and the last 3 games are the NFC. And I have never seen that happen. So, but you've got 2 games on Saturday, you've got 3 on Sunday, and then you've got 1 on Monday night. You've got Cleveland and Houston, and this will be the first time that they will play each other in the playoffs. In fact, Cleveland has only been, I believe, to the playoffs 3 or 4 times since they came back in the league in the 2000. And Houston, this is only their 6th playoff game. So, but saying that, I think Houston, and I know we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but Houston last week solidified, in my opinion, and how I feel, the coach of the year, the offensive rookie player of the year, and the defensive rookie player of the year.
Yeah, it's been an amazing transformation to see what has happened and what has transpired in Houston. But as I always say, get 2 things right and your organization has a chance. Get quarterback right and get your coach right. Houston was able to go 2 for 2 and getting the right quarterback, getting the right coach, and give themselves an opportunity to get that franchise turned around, to have to go in and play some significant games going down the stretch, just to be able to get into the playoffs. We know how fast those things can change. Just think about it. Last year, people were criticizing them for blowing the first pick.
Yep.
Last game of the season, and they go out and they win and they score, and now they're not picking one. And so, but in not picking one, they actually wound up, in my opinion, with the right quarterback.
Absolutely.
And so, and D'Amico Ryans has done an unbelievable job over there, and it just shows how the NFL, how you can get it turned around really quickly because of how the NFL schedule is set up, and also those teams that get those opportunities, they're not having a draft lottery, Major League Baseball, and giving yourself a chance to get back up. And so I'm pretty impressed by what Houston's been able to do this year. I don't always give Houston their props and everything,
Right.
but they were able to do it.
Well, I've said that Houston's organization had been almost as bad as Cleveland's. Especially after they drafted Deshaun Watson, and he was a great pick, but then with all of his issues and everything, and how they handled the J.J. Watt trade and and trading for Tunzel and everything else, I just couldn't see how they were doing it. But they have finally turned the ship right and did it right. And last year, when they fired Lovie Smith, you go, how do you fire this guy who really coached pretty well? Well, I guess you can't argue it anymore, because they even got a better one in DeMarco Ryans, who actually came back to Houston because that's who he played for as a player. So in this game, you've got the Cleveland defense, which is the number one defense in pass defense, versus Houston, who has one of the top passing offenses. And C.J. Stroud was one of the fifth rookie quarterback to throw for over 4,000 yards. So with this game, who do you have?
I think it's going to be a very interesting game. I'm going to go with Cleveland in this game. Maybe I'm finally tired of picking against Fluco. But I don't know. This should be a very interesting game. But I think Cleveland defensively might give themselves a chance at being able to place a little bit of pressure on C.J. Stroud. It's still first playoff game as a rookie. Not everybody goes out there and plays well in their very first game. And so I'm going to go with Cleveland in this game.
And I had Cleveland the whole time, but then I found out Ward got injured, and he is a question mark for the game. But saying that, the Houston's wide receiver crew has lost two big ones. Now, Nico Collins has totally dominated, but if you can shut him down, then your passing game is not as well. So saying that, I am also going to pick Cleveland. So now we got Miami and Kansas City. And Miami 3 weeks ago looked like that they were going to win the division. It looked like everybody else in the division was going to fall apart. And then Buffalo ended up winning their last 5 games when nobody thought that they were going to win it, because they had to play Philadelphia, they had to play Kansas City, play Dallas, and they did their mark. Saying that, this is going to be a cold game Saturday night. It is supposedly going to be the coldest game played by a Miami Dolphin team in the playoffs ever. And Kansas City, it could be even colder than the game it was in '95. Saying that, Kansas City has never beaten Miami in the playoffs. They are 0-3. They lost the 71 game, the longest game in NFL history in overtime. And then they lost 91 on the phantom Dave Jott holding call, which pushed Nick Lowry back, and he missed the field goal. and then the one in '94, and I believe that was Joe Montana's last game as a Kansas City Chief.
Yeah, we can pull out all the stats and we can pull out all the history or whatever. That little warm weather team is not going to come up here and win a game in Kansas City. Think about it. Some of the coldest games in NFL history have pitted teams that come from warm weather climates against cold weather climate teams.
Yep.
Right? We got the historic Ice Bowl.
Right.
Cowboys in Green Bay, right? It's -15 at kickoff.
Yep.
And here you got this team from Greenway, Wisconsin, and a team from Dallas, Texas, right?
Absolutely.
The 1980 AFC Championship game where you had the Bengals in Cincinnati versus the San Diego Chargers. And the wind chill of that game was actually colder than the Ice Bowl.
Right, minus 59.
Right. The regular temperature wasn't as cold, but the wind chill factor was.
Right.
And so how do these teams always wind up in these cold games, right?
Absolutely.
It's always somebody from California, Florida, that Texas that wind up in these ridiculously cold games. And so if I was Miami, I would have been here in Kansas City probably 2 days ago trying to get my players acclimated to the weather. But I don't think that Tua is not a big arm quarterback. I don't think the wind and the weather factor is good for them. I don't know that they could lean on their running game enough against the Chiefs to say, okay, we can lean on the running game and then allow him to do that. I just see Chiefs. Regardless of how the Chiefs have been playing, I just see the Chiefs all over this game.
The one thing that I see is this is his first playoff game. And just like C.J. Stroud, even though C.J. Stroud is a rookie and Tua isn't, they're both rookies in the playoffs. Kansas City probably is the most veteran when it comes to the playoffs. They've been to the Super Bowl 3 of the last 5 years. They've won 2 Super Bowls. They know what it takes to get it done, whereas Miami, outside of Tyreek Hill, does not know. And because of that, I've got the Kansas City Chiefs winning. Now, hopefully they will continue on winning after that, but right now I do have the Kansas City Chiefs winning. Mm-hmm. And you got the Chiefs too?
Chiefs all the way.
Absolutely. So now we go to Pittsburgh at Buffalo. Now, Pittsburgh did a phenomenal job beating Baltimore. I know Baltimore didn't play half of their players, but that's fine. Pittsburgh didn't ask them not to play them, and they did win. But the bad thing is T.J. Watt will not be playing at all, and that is Pittsburgh's best player.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting. Mason, the red-nosed Rudolph, going to be playing for Pittsburgh. I was really surprised at Pittsburgh getting into the playoffs. 6 weeks ago, I thought they had no chance of getting into the playoffs. They had issues at quarterback. There was people calling for Mike Tomlin's head. There was just so much unrest. Again, another testimony to his ability to be rock steady in the face of all types of adversity and stuff. But I think Buffalo over the last 5 weeks has gone through a gauntlet. And even though they haven't played perfect football, they've played good football when they've needed to. They've been good enough. In spite of Josh Allen turning the ball over, they've been good enough, right? They've got some big wins. And, again, same thing with them 6 weeks ago. It looked like they might not make the playoffs. I mean, they still went into last week with the possibility of not making the playoffs.
Right.
If they lost and 2 other teams won, they could have been out. So, but with that said, they're the number 2 seed. They're playing at home, and I don't see Pittsburgh going on the road and defeating the Bills.
I totally agree. I would love to see Buffalo lose and have Pittsburgh win, and then Kansas City would play Pittsburgh on the next week. But obviously that's not going to happen, and Patrick Mahomes is going to have his first road playoff game of his career. Now, Green Bay and Dallas. Now we can talk about the first playoffs between them in '67. You know, we were talking about the Ice Bowl. We talked about even the year before when they played in Dallas and lost it. But here's the thing: they lost the last two playoffs to Green Bay, which is 2014, 2016. They have lost 9 of the last 10 games to Green Bay. What is Dallas going to have to do to beat Green Bay?
Just get ahead early and establish that they are the superior team, create pressure on Jordan Love with his being his first playoff game, not allow the Packers to hang around and some fluke play happens and Mason Crossbar happen again and Aaron Rodgers going out of bounds and throwing a pass to that unnamed tight end that changed the game. A bad referee call on the Dez caught it.
I know.
All of it, man. Yeah. And they have lost 9 out of 10. And if you go and look at those 9 out of 10 losses, they've all been 7 points or less, but one. I think two of them, and I think one of them was a 10-point game. And then there was one blowout in there, and so the year of the Dez caught it, Dallas had beaten Green Bay earlier in the year that year. That's the one win
between in the last 10.
It was in 2016 when Dak rookie year they had beat them, and so it's been amazing to just see this gauntlet of domination. But the majority of that domination was Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
And then prior to him, Brett Favre. And so this is going to be their first experience of Jordan Love, which can be a little bit deceiving because you don't have an opportunity to have played this young man. But I think Dallas is playing well enough. I think Dak is playing at a high level. CeeDee Lamb is off the charts right now, and so but they've got to get ahead, stay ahead, and then at some point in time, Tony Pollard has to show up in the run game.
Yep, absolutely. So let me ask you this. If the Dallas Cowboys do not make it to the NFC Championship game, does that cost McCarthy his job?
No. I just there's too much in place right now for Jerry to do that. I think the only thing that could possibly make Jerry have some unrest over it is if they lose this Sunday. If you win this week, but then you lose in the divisional round, and you're gonna be in your feelings. But at the end of the day, I think that's going to be the problem. You want to win these 2 games at home. They've won, 16 in a row at home. Everything points to them being able to get to the NFC Championship game, and and then with a little luck, maybe you get to host it.
Got it. So I do have Dallas, and I am guessing you have Green Bay.
I got Dallas.
So, all right. So now the Los Angeles Rams at the Detroit Lions. Technically, they have not played each other in the playoffs. Well, technically they have. 1952 was the last time. They have played 87 times, which is more than anybody in the playoffs itself. So this will be a first matchup between the Rams and Detroit. And you have the 2 quarterbacks who had played for each other and got traded for each other.
Yeah. This is one of those games that has a lot of storylines, same as the storyline of the Cowboys playing the Packers with Mike McCarthy playing against a team that he took and won a Super Bowl with. But, yeah, Goff and Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford being the former quarterback of the Detroit Lions, and then Jared Goff being the former Rams. I think it's a great matchup. The Rams are peaking at this time of the year. They are the team in the NFC that I would say I don't want to play them.
Right.
That's the team I don't want to play. Everybody else, I'm like, yeah, but I don't play those guys because they're getting hot at the right time. And so with that said, I believe that the Rams are going to go into Detroit and win that game.
I'm thinking the same thing, because here's my thing. Jared Goff, you would usually think, okay, you turn the ball over on the road, but you play well at home. Well, he hadn't played extremely well at home either. Now, saying that, he did lose Laporta, and we don't know his status, and that was his goat to go guy. In fact, he set the NFL rookie record for most passes in a season. And do you know who he passed?
I'm gonna rookie tight end. I'm gonna probably say Kelsey.
No.
No,
Keith Jackson,
Keith
1988.
Jackson. Yeah, with the Eagles.
So, saying that, I think I'm going to go with the Rams too. I'm from the Show Me State. Detroit's going to have to show me. Last game of the weekend, and it could be the best game of the weekend, or it could be the absolute worst weekend. You got Philadelphia at Tampa Bay, and Kansas City had struggled this past year, but Philadelphia has struggled even worse than what Kansas City did, and they completely limped in here. And then you've got your Shaker Baker.
It's my guy, Shaker Baker. Yeah, if anybody could back into the playoffs, the Eagles certainly backed into the playoffs. Did not play well down the stretch, lost 5 out of their last 6. Remember, at one time, everybody had them as the number 1 team in the league. They were 10-1, not winning convincingly, but yet still continuing to win. And then all of a sudden they hit a stretch coming down. And then everybody said, well, they'll still win the East because they've got the 3 easiest games to close out, playing the Giants twice and in Arizona, and then you lose to both Arizona and the Giants in consecutive weeks. I'm going to go with Shaker Baker, man. Shaker Baker is going to pull it off and beat the Eagles, and Nick Sirianni and his arrogant self is going to go home for the playoffs.
As much as I don't want to do this, I'm going to pick Philadelphia. I think they will find a way to win, but I seriously doubt this. So we are running past time, but we cannot go without the best segment of the show, Penny for Your Thoughts.
Well, Penny for Your Thoughts originally was going to be about those 3 coaches that are exiting, about Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, and Pete Carroll. What are the odds of us having 3 high-profile coaches and that have made tremendous impacts in the respective areas and cities that they were able to be in? You can make an argument that Nick Saban is the greatest college coach that we've ever seen. Pete Carroll was able to do something that most coaches don't do, is to be able to win a national championship, not only back-to-back, but then be able to win an NFL championship. And Bill Belichick showed us a level of consistency during that Patriot run that is going to take a long time for anybody to truly rival that. But I also want to remind everybody of how important of a day January the 11th is. It's not one of those days that just automatically jumps out at you, but we've had some of our greatest sports moments on January the 11th. January 11, 1970, for the second consecutive time, the AFL wins the Super Bowl, and our beloved Kansas City Chiefs beat the Minnesota Vikings in Super Bowl IV, and it was on January the 11th. Also on January the 11th, the Dez Caught It game happened in January 11, 2015 was the Dez Caught It game. And so that was one of our other great games that we had on that. Also, January the 11th, 1981, the Oakland Raiders become the first wild card team to win a Super Bowl. And so there was just a lot that has gone on that I found out, little nuggets on January the 11th. And so with that said, we say Happy New Year to everybody. Salute to Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, and Pete Carroll. But also remember, January 11th, we've had some of our greatest sports events on January the 11th. So we'll see what happens this weekend.
Absolutely. And with that, we are at the end of our phenomenal show. Coach 24, Darwin Penny, DJ Scatter, George Walker, and I am Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice. Be awesome, not angry, and you guys have yourselves a phenomenal football NFL playoff weekend.